The morning sun cast long shadows across the mining colony of New Dakota. Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked the mining equipment one more time. The machines hummed quietly, pulling valuable metals from deep underground. It was supposed to be another normal day. Jake had been running this mining operation for 3 years now. He liked the quiet life after everything he had been through. The colony was small, only about 200 people, but they all worked well together. Most of them had come here looking for peace, just like him. Lisa Parker was fixing one of the drilling machines nearby. She always kept the equipment running perfectly. Her hands moved quickly and surely as she worked. Jake watched her for a moment, thinking about how lucky they were to have someone so skilled. "Jake, you need to see this," called Ben Carter from the communication building. His voice sounded worried. Jake walked over quickly. Ben was staring at the long-range scanner, his face pale. On the screen, Jake could see something that made his stomach drop. Ships. Lots of them. And they were big. "How many?" Jake asked quietly. 37 ships, Ben said. "They're not human ships either. The computer says they match Zephyrian design." Jake felt his blood turn cold. Everyone in human space knew about the Zephyrians. They were warriors who traveled from world to world, taking what they wanted. No one had ever successfully fought them off. They were bigger than humans, stronger, and had better weapons. "How long until they get here?" Jake asked. 2 hours? Maybe less, Ben replied. Jake looked out the window at the colony. People were going about their daily work, not knowing what was coming. He thought about telling everyone to run, but where could they go? The nearest human world was weeks away, and they only had a few small transport ships. Kate Sullivan came running into the building. She had been working in the administration office when the alarm went off. "What's happening?" she asked. "Zephyrians," Jake said simply. Kate's face went white. She had heard the stories too. Whole colonies wiped out or enslaved. Planets stripped of everything valuable. The Zephyrian Empire had been growing for decades, and they showed no mercy to those who got in their way. "What do we do?" she asked. Jake thought for a moment. He looked at Ben and Kate, then back at the scanner. The ships were getting closer. Soon, they would be able to see the colony. "We stand our ground," he said. Ben stared at him like he had lost his mind. "They have Plazians. They have plasma weapons and battle armor. We have mining tools and old hunting rifles." "I know what they have," Jake said calmly. "But running won't help us now." Jake walked to the colony's announcement system and pressed the button. His voice echoed across the settlement. "At attention, everyone. We have visitors coming. Zephyrian ships will be here in about 2 hours. I need everyone to stay calm and continue working. Do not panic. I repeat, do not panic." People stopped what they were doing and looked around. Some started talking quickly to each other. Others just stood still, not sure what to do. Jake walked outside and saw Lisa still working on the drilling machine. She looked up at him with steady eyes. "Zephyrians?" she asked.
Yes.
Jake said. Lisa nodded and went back to her work. She didn't look scared at all. More people gathered around Jake. Tom Wilson, who ran the food storage, came over with his wife Mary. Dr. Sarah Mitchell left her medical building to join them. Old Pete Johnson, who had been mining longer than anyone, walked up slowly. "Jake," Pete said, "I've seen what Zephyrians do to mining colonies. Maybe we should think about leaving." "Where would we go, Pete?" Jake asked. "Our ships are too slow. They'd catch us in space, and then we'd have nowhere to run. So we just wait for them to kill us," Mary Wilson asked. Her voice was shaking. "No," Jake said. "We show them who we are." The next 2 hours passed slowly. Jake made sure everyone knew what was happening. Told them to keep working but stay close to the main buildings. Checked on the few weapons they had, mostly hunting rifles and some old military equipment from his own collection. When the ships finally appeared in the sky, they blocked out the sun. The Zephyrian vessels were huge, dark metal constructions that looked like they were built for war. They moved in perfect formation, showing off their discipline and power. The largest ship landed first, right in the middle of the colony's main area. The others stayed in the air, their weapons pointed down at the buildings. The message was clear. Any resistance would be crushed immediately. Jake stood in front of the main administration building. Behind him, the colonists gathered. He could see fear in some faces, but also determination. These people had come to New Dakota to build something new. They weren't going to give it up without a fight. The ship's landing ramp lowered with a mechanical hiss. Steam came out, and then Jake saw them. Zephyrians were tall, nearly 8 feet each, with gray skin and long arms. They wore black armor that seemed to absorb light. Their weapons hummed with energy. But it was their leader who made Jake pay attention. She walked down the ramp like she owned the world. Her armor was decorated with symbols that Jake guessed showed her rank. She was clearly someone important, someone who had conquered worlds before. She stopped about 20 feet from Jake and looked at him with yellow eyes that seemed to see everything. When she spoke, her voice was deep and commanding. "I am Commander Vexera of the Zephyrian Empire. This world now belongs to us. You will surrender all weapons and resources immediately." Jake didn't move. Looked back at her calmly, his hands empty at his sides. Behind him, he could hear the colonists breathing, but no one ran. No one screamed. They all just waited. Commander Vexara seemed surprised by this. She had expected panic, begging, maybe some foolish attempt to fight. Instead, she found herself looking at a human who seemed completely unafraid. She stepped closer to Jake, using her height to try to intimidate him. "Did you hear me, human? Your world is ours now." Jake smiled slightly. It wasn't a happy smile, but it wasn't afraid either. "I heard you," he said quietly. Vexera felt something strange. In all her years of conquest, she had never met anyone who looked at her the way this human did. There was no fear in his eyes, no panic in his voice. If anything, he seemed almost patient. Commander Vexara stared at the human standing before her. In her 20 years of conquest, she had seen many different species surrender. Some begged for mercy, others tried to fight and died quickly. A few attempted to bargain, but none had ever just stood there looking at her like she was expected. She walked around Jake slowly, studying him. He was smaller than her, weaker looking, with no visible weapons. His clothes were simple work gear, covered in dust from the mining operation. Everything about him screamed that he should be afraid, but he wasn't. He seemed calm for someone about to lose everything, Vexara said, stopping in front of him again. Jake looked up at her yellow eyes. "Should I be worried?" The question caught her off guard. Should he be worried? Of course he should be worried. She commanded 37 warships. She had weapons that could turn this entire colony into glass. Her soldiers were trained killers who had taken countless worlds. "Do you know who I am?" she asked. "Commander Vexera of the Zephyrian Empire," Jake replied. "You've conquered the Altair system, the Kepler colonies, and at least 15 other worlds. You prefer to make examples of those who resist. Your ships carry plasma cannons that can crack a planet's crust." Vexara felt a chill run down her spine. This human had done his homework. "Then you know what happens to those who refuse to surrender?" "I do," Jake said simply. "And yet you still stand there." "Yes." Vexara looked past Jake at the other humans. They were all watching the conversation, but none of them looked ready to run. The woman who had been fixing the drilling machine was still holding her tools. An older man with gray hair stood with his arms crossed. A younger woman in medical clothes waited patiently. "Are all humans this stupid?" Vexera asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Depends on your definition of stupid," Jake replied. Vexara felt her anger rising. Every other species had shown proper respect for Zephyrian power. They understood that resistance was pointless. They knew their place in the order of things. But these humans acted like they were equals. She activated her plasma rifle, the weapon humming to life with deadly energy. The sound echoed across the colony. Several humans flinched at the noise, but Jake didn't move. "This weapon can cut through 3 feet of steel," she said. "It can vaporize a human body in seconds." "Impressive," Jake said. "I could kill you right now. You could try." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Vexara felt her heart rate increase. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever suggested that she might fail at something. "Try," she repeated. Jake shrugged. "Well, you'd probably succeed. But then you'd have to explain to your superiors why you killed someone who was trying to surrender. You're not surrendering. You're standing there like you have a choice, don't I?" Vexara realized she was getting nowhere with this conversation. She decided to try a different approach. She turned to address all the humans. "People of this colony," she announced. "Your leader seems to think he can protect you. He cannot. I have conquered worlds with populations in the millions. Your small settlement means nothing to me. If you do not surrender now, I will demonstrate. What happens to those who resist the Zephyrian Empire?" She waited for the panic to start. Usually the threat of violence was enough to make civilians turn on their leaders. But the humans just looked at each other and then back at her. Some of them even smiled. "Why are they smiling?" she asked Jake. "Maybe they know something you don't," he replied. Vexara felt that chill again. She was missing something important. These humans were acting like they had information she didn't possess. Like they were playing a game where they knew the rules and she didn't. She grabbed Jake by the front of his shirt and lifted him up to her eye level. Her strength was far greater than his, and she wanted to remind him of that fact. "Listen to me, human. I have burned cities to ash. I have turned entire populations into slaves. I have broken the will of species that thought they were strong. What makes you think you're different?" Jake looked into her yellow eyes without flinching. "'Cause you're asking the wrong question." "What? You keep asking why I'm not afraid? That's not the important question." Vexara set him down, but kept her grip on his shirt. "Then what is the important question?" Jake smiled, and it was the most disturbing thing she had seen all day. It wasn't the smile of someone who was scared or trying to be brave. It was the smile of someone who knew. A secret. "The important question," Jake said quietly, "is why you should be afraid of us." Vexara released him and stepped back. "Afraid?" "Of you. That's right. You have no weapons. No ships. No army. You're just miners and farmers and shopkeepers." "We." The question made her look around again. The humans were still watching, still waiting. But now she noticed things she hadn't seen before. The way they stood suggested discipline. The way they moved showed training. The way they looked at her wasn't fear or curiosity. It was evaluation. "Who are you people?" she asked. "We're colonists," Jake said. "We came here to start new lives." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer you need right now." Vexara felt frustration building inside her. Every instinct told her that something was wrong. These humans weren't behaving like any other species she had conquered. They weren't showing the proper respect for her power. She decided to try one more time to make them understand their situation. She raised her plasma rifle and pointed it at Jake's chest. "I'm going to ask you one more time," she said. "Why aren't you running, human?" Jake looked at the weapon pointed at him, then back at her face. His expression didn't change. If anything, he seemed more relaxed than before, because he said in a voice so calm and confident that it made her blood run cold, "We've already won." The words hit Vexara like a physical blow. She had expected begging or defiance or even a clever threat. But this simple statement of fact, delivered with absolute certainty, shook her to her core. "Won what?" she demanded.
"This,"
Jake gestured. At the colony, at her ships, at the entire situation. Like it was all part of some plan that had already been completed. "You haven't won anything," Vexara said, but her voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Haven't we?" Behind Jake, the other humans were definitely smiling now. Not the nervous smiles of people trying to be brave, but the satisfied smiles of people who had just watched their favorite team score the winning goal. Vexara realized that nothing about this situation was what it seemed. She was supposed to be the predator here, but somehow she felt like prey. She had come to this world expecting easy victory, but instead found herself facing an enemy she didn't understand. And for the first time in her career as a conqueror, Commander Vexara felt afraid. Commander Vexara kept her weapon pointed at Jake, but her hands were shaking slightly. She had never felt this confused during a conquest before. Everything about this situation was wrong. "Explain yourself," she demanded. "How have you won anything?" Looked at her calmly. "You really want to know?" "Yes." "Then lower your weapon, and I'll tell you." Vexara hesitated. Lowering her weapon would show weakness in front of her soldiers. But she needed answers more than she needed to look strong. Slowly, she pointed the plasma rifle toward the ground. "Talk," she said. Jake nodded to the other humans behind him. Why don't you tell her about yourself, Lisa? The woman with the tools. Stepped forward. Vexara had noticed her earlier because she seemed so calm while working on the drilling equipment. Now she looked even more relaxed. I'm Lisa Parker, she said. I fix machines here in the colony. So, Vexara asked? I also used to work for human military intelligence, Lisa continued. I spent 8 years tracking enemy ship movements and analyzing battle patterns. I know exactly how many soldiers you have on each of your ships, what weapons they carry, and how long your fuel will last. Vexara felt her stomach drop. Military intelligence? But this woman looked like a simple mechanic. Your turn, Ben, Jake said. The man from the communications building walked over. He had seemed nervous earlier when he first detected the Zephyrian ships. Now he looked perfectly calm. Ben Carter, he said. I run communications for the colony, but I used to be a combat medic with the 3rd Human Marine Division. I served in the Titan Wars for 6 years, saw action on 12 different worlds. Kate Sullivan spoke up next. Kate Sullivan. I handle administration here. Before that, I coordinated refugee evacuations during the Mars crisis, helped move 3 million people in 2 weeks while under enemy fire. Vexara looked around at the other humans. They were all looking at her with the same calm, patient expressions, like they were teachers and she was a student who was finally starting to understand the lesson. What is this place? She asked quietly. New Dakota Mining Colony, Jake replied. Just like it says on all the official records, but you're all military. We're military, Jake corrected. We came here to retire. To live quiet lives after serving our species in various wars and conflicts. Retired soldiers? Vexara repeated. That's right. Lisa wanted to work with machines instead of spy satellites. Ben wanted to help people grow crops instead of patching up wounded Marines. Kate wanted to organize community events instead of emergency evacuations. And I wanted to dig metals out of the ground instead of ... Jake paused. Instead of what? Vexara asked. Instead of planning military operations. The words hit her like ice water. You were a military planner? Strategic operations, Jake said. I spent 15 years figuring out how to win battles against enemies who had better weapons and more soldiers than we did. Vexara felt the world spinning around her. This wasn't a mining colony full of helpless civilians. This was a retirement community for human military veterans. People who had spent their careers learning how to fight and win wars. How many of you? She asked. Jake looked around at the gathered humans. About 60% of the colony are former military. The rest are their families or friends who came with them. Teachers, doctors, engineers. But they've all lived around soldiers long enough to know how we think. This doesn't change anything, Vexara said, trying to sound confident. You're still outnumbered. You still don't have weapons that can fight my ships. You're right. Jake agreed. If this was a straight fight, you would win easily. Then how have you already won? Jake smiled that disturbing smile again. Because we're not fighting you. What do you mean? Lisa, when did you first detect their scout ships? Lisa checked a small device on her wrist. For months? 2 weeks? 3 days ago? Vexara stared at her. That's impossible. Our scouts are invisible to primitive sensors. They are, Lisa agreed. But I didn't use primitive sensors. I used some equipment I borrowed, ... from my old job. It's amazing what you can build when you have access to a good machine shop and 15 years of intelligence training. For months, Vexara repeated. You've known we were coming for 4 months. We've known someone was coming, Jake said. It took us a while to figure out it was Zephyrians. But once we did, well, we had time to prepare. Prepare how, you have? No army, no fleet, don't we? Ben stepped forward again. Commander, can I ask you something? When your ships arrived, did you scan the system for other vessels? Of course we did. It's fair only a few small transport ships. Nothing that could threaten us. Did you scan beyond the asteroid belt? Vexara felt that cold feeling in her stomach again. Why would we? There's nothing out there but rocks and ice. Kate, Jake said. Kate Sullivan smiled. I sent a message to Earth's Defense Command about 3 months ago. Old habits, you know? When you spend years coordinating with military units, you remember how to contact them. What kind of message? Vexara asked, though she was starting to fear the answer. The kind that says a mining colony full of military veterans has detected an incoming invasion fleet and requests assistance. No, Vexara whispered. Admiral Rodriguez and the Fifth Fleet arrived 2 weeks ago, Kate continued. They're hiding. Behind the big asteroid on the far side of the system, 63 ships, including 4 dreadnoughts. Vexara felt like she couldn't breathe. The Fifth Fleet was legendary among military circles. They had never lost a battle. Admiral Rodriguez was known throughout human space as a tactical genius. You're lying, she said. Ben, show her, Jake said. Ben pulled out a small communication device. Admiral Rodriguez, this is New Dakota Colony. The guests have arrived. Please, confirm your position. A woman's voice came through the speaker, clear and professional. New Dakota, this is Admiral Rodriguez. We are in position and ready to proceed. All Zephyrian vessels are targeted and locked, awaiting your signal. Vexara's legs felt weak. She looked up at the sky where her ships were hovering. They thought they were in a position of strength, but they were actually trapped. 63 ships, she said numbly. Against your 37, Jake confirmed. Where you are while you don't know where they are. Not great odds. But why? Vexara asked. Why go to all this trouble? You could have just evacuated the colony, because that's not how humans work, Jake said. When someone threatens our people, we don't run away. We make sure it doesn't happen again. We set a trap. We set a trap, Jake agreed. We let you come here thinking you were conquering helpless miners. Instead, you flew right into the middle of the most experienced military minds in human space, backed up by our most powerful fleet. Vexara realized that everything she thought she knew about this situation was wrong. She wasn't the hunter here. She was the prey, and the humans had been patiently waiting for her to walk into their trap. What happens now? She asked quietly. Jake looked at her with something that might have been sympathy. Now you get to make a choice that no other species has ever had the chance to make. What choice? Do you want to be the first Zephyrian commander to surrender honorably, or the last one to die fighting a battle you can't win? Vexara looked around at the humans surrounding her, veterans all of them, people who had spent their lives learning how to win impossible battles. They had just won another one without firing a single shot. For the first time in her life, Commander Vexara understood what it felt like to be completely outmaneuvered. Commander Vexara stared at the communication device in Ben's hand. The voice of Admiral Rodriguez still echoed in her mind. 63 human ships, hidden and ready to attack. Her own fleet was trapped like animals in a cage. This is impossible. She said, our intelligence networks are the best in the galaxy. We would have detected a human fleet of that size. Jake shook his head. Your intelligence networks are good at finding things you expect to find. But you've never really understood how humans think. What do you mean? You study our military bases, our weapons, our ship designs. You count our soldiers and analyze our battle records. But you miss the most important thing about humanity. Vexara felt frustrated. Which is what? We don't wait for problems. To come to us, we go looking for them first. Lisa stepped forward, still holding her tools. Commander, how long have the Zephyrians been expanding into this part of space? 5 years, Vexara replied automatically. And in those 5 years, how many human worlds have you attacked? None. We were saving human space for later, after we secured the easier targets. Exactly, Jake said. You thought you were being smart. Take the weak worlds first, build up your strength, then hit the humans when you were ready.
Nice.
It's a sound. Strategy it would be, if you were fighting any other species. But humans don't work that way. Ben activated another device on his belt. A holographic display appeared in the air, showing a map of local space. Red dots marked Zephyrian conquests. Blue dots showed human colonies. Look at this pattern, Ben said, pointing to the display. Every world you've taken is within 3 jumps of human space. Every conquest brings you closer to our colonies. Vexara studied the map. So we noticed, Kate said. About 6 months after you started expanding, human intelligence identified the pattern. We realized you were going to come for us eventually. And instead of waiting, Jake continued, We decided to do something about it. The holographic display changed, showing ship movements over the past year. Vexera watched as blue lines traced paths from human space to various locations throughout the region. "What are those?" she asked. "Reconnaissance missions," Lisa replied. "Human ships have been watching every Zephyrian operation for the past 4 years. We know which worlds you've taken, how you took them, and what resources you gathered from each one. We've been studying you," Ben added, "the same way you thought you were studying us." Vexara felt cold dread spreading through her body. "That's not possible. We would have detected your ships, would you?" Jake asked. "Lisa, tell her about the stealth modifications." Lisa grinned. "Turns out when you combine human engineering with captured Zephyrian technology, you can build some very interesting things. We've had ships watching your fleets for years. Small ones invisible to your sensors, just gathering information. You've been spying on us. We've been learning about you," Jake corrected. "Learning your tactics, your weaknesses, your patterns. Did you know that Zephyrian commanders always follow the same approach? Scout the target, gather the fleet, attack with overwhelming force, demand surrender? It works," Vexera said defensively. "Worked," Kate corrected, "until you tried it on a species that pays attention." The holographic display changed again, now showing detailed information about Zephyrian ships, weapons, and tactics. Vexara recognized classified information that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. "How do you have this data?" she demanded. "Your own ships told us," Ben said. "Every time you communicate with each other, every time you send reports back to your homeworlds, every time you update your tactical databases, we're listening. Our communications are encrypted." "They were," Lisa said. "But encryption is just a puzzle, and humans are very good at solving puzzles, especially when we have 4 years to work on it." Vexara realized that everything the Zephyrian Empire thought it knew about human capabilities was wrong. They had underestimated human intelligence, human technology, and most importantly, human determination. "You planned this entire scenario," she said. "We planned for several scenarios," Jake replied. "This mining colony was just one possibility. We have 12 other colonies that could have served as bait depending on which direction you chose to expand." "Bait, of course. Did you really think it was a coincidence that New Dakota had such valuable mineral deposits? That it was so poorly defended? That it was positioned right where you would want to establish a forward base?" Vexera thought back to the intelligence reports that had led her to this world. The rare metals, the small population, the strategic location. It had seemed like the perfect target. "You wanted us to come here?" she realized. "We needed you to come here," Kate said. "Or somewhere like here. Somewhere we could control the situation." "But why? Why not just attack our fleets directly?" Jake looked at her with something that might have been pity. "'Cause humans don't just want to win battles, Commander. We want to win wars. And the best way to win a war is to make your enemy understand that fighting you is a mistake." "What do you mean?" "If we had attacked your fleets in open space, we would have won. But then the Zephyrian Empire would have sent more fleets, bigger fleets. The war would have gone on for years. Millions would have died on both sides. So instead," Ben continued, "we decided to show you something that would make the Zephyrian Empire think twice about attacking humanity." "Show us what?" Jake gestured around the colony. "That humans don't just react to threats. We anticipate them. We prepare for them. We turn them into opportunities." Vexera looked around at the colonists. They were still standing calmly, still, watching her with those patient eyes. But now she understood what she was seeing. These weren't just retired veterans. They were a message. "You're telling us that any human world we attack might be a trap," she said. "We're telling you that every human world you might attack is definitely a trap," Jake corrected. "This colony isn't special, Commander. It's normal. Do you think we would send our veterans to retire on worlds that couldn't defend themselves?" The implications hit her like a physical blow. If New Dakota was typical of human colonies, then every world in human space was potentially defended by experienced military personnel. Every attack could be walking into another trap. "Admiral Rodriguez," came the voice from Ben's communicator. "We're reading increased energy signatures from the Zephyrian ships. Are they preparing to fight?" Ben looked at Vexera. Are you? Vexera thought about her options. She could order her ships to attack, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. She could try to retreat, but human ships were already in position to intercept them. She could attempt to negotiate, but she had nothing to offer that humans couldn't take by force. What do you want? She asked finally. We want you to go home. Jake said simply. We want you to tell your superiors what happened here. We want them to understand that attacking humanity will cost more than they're willing to pay. And if they don't listen, Jake's expression became cold. Then we'll teach them the same lesson we taught you. But next time, we might not be so generous with our terms. Vexara realized that she was looking at something she had never encountered before. A species that was not only capable of defending itself, but had turned defense into an art form. Humans didn't just fight back when attacked. They fought forward, anticipating threats and eliminating them before they could become dangerous. For the first time in her career, Commander Vexara understood that she had encountered a species that was more dangerous than the Zephyrians. Commander Vexara stood in silence for a long moment, processing everything she had learned. Around her, the human colonists waited patiently. Above her, 37 Zephyrian warships hung in the sky, unaware that they were surrounded by a superior force. He said, I have a choice, she finally said to Jake. You do. Tell me what it is. Jake walked closer to her, his movements calm and unthreatening. The choice is simple, Commander. You can be the first Zephyrian officer to surrender with honor, or you can be remembered as the one who led her people into a massacre they couldn't win. Surrender. The word felt strange in her mouth. In all her years of conquest, no Zephyrian commander had ever surrendered. They fought until victory or death. Honorable surrender, Jake clarified. Your crews will be treated well. Your ships will be escorted safely out of human space. You'll be allowed to return to your empire with a message. What message? That humanity is not prey. Vexara looked up at her ships again. She thought about the thousands of soldiers under her command. Good soldiers who trusted her to lead them wisely. If she fought here, many of them would die for nothing. And if I refuse? She asked. Ben's communicator crackled to life again. Dakota, this is Admiral Rodriguez. We're detecting weapon charging sequences on several Zephyrian vessels. Should we interpret this as hostile intent? All eyes turned to Vexara. The moment stretched like a tight wire. One word from her could start a battle that would end with the destruction of her entire fleet. Admiral Ben said into his communicator, Stand by for further orders. Copy that. New Dakota. Standing by. Jake stepped even closer to Vexara. Commander, I want you to understand something. If you choose to fight, my people will win. But winning isn't our goal here. Then what is? Understanding? You want the Zephyrian Empire to understand what kind of species humanity really is. Is what? Jake's expression grew serious. We're the species that turns every conflict into a learning experience. Every battle teaches us something new about our enemies. Every war makes us stronger and smarter. Lisa stepped forward. Commander, we've been studying Zephyrian tactics for 4 years. We know how your ships fight, how your weapons work, how your commanders think. If we go to war, we'll win not just this battle, but every battle that comes after. But we don't want war, Kate added. War is wasteful. War destroys things that could be built instead. War kills people who could have lived productive lives. So you're offering me a way out, Vexara said. We're offering you a way forward, Jake corrected. A way for both our species to avoid. A conflict that would hurt everyone involved. Vexara thought about her empire. The Zephyrians had built their civilization on conquest and expansion. They took what they needed from weaker species and moved on to the next target. It had worked for generations, but humans were different. They didn't just defend themselves. They learned from every encounter and used that knowledge to become more dangerous. Fighting them wouldn't just be one war. It would be an endless series of conflicts, each one harder than the last. What guarantees do I have? She asked. Guarantees of what? That you won't attack Zephyrian space once I leave. Jake smiled, but it wasn't a threatening smile this time. Commander, we're retired. We came here to live quiet lives. The last thing we want is to go back to war. But if we threaten you again, then we'll stop you again, Ben said simply. And next time, we might not offer surrender as an option. Vexera understood the message. This was humanity being generous. They were giving her a chance to avoid disaster, but only once. If the Zephyrians continued to pose a threat, the response would be much harsher. She activated her own communicator. All ships, this is Commander Vexera. Cease weapon charging immediately. Power down all offensive systems, Commander, came a confused voice from one of her ship captains. Are we under attack? No, Captain. We are. Reassessing the situation, she closed the communication channel and looked at Jake. I need to speak with my officers. This decision affects more than just me, of course. Take all the time you need. Ow! Long do I have? Admiral Rodriguez is a patient woman, but she's also a military officer with orders to protect human space. I wouldn't test her patience too long. Vexera nodded and walked back toward her landing ship. As she moved, she noticed something that made her pause. The human colonists were going back to their daily work. Lisa returned to fixing her drilling equipment. Kate walked back toward the administration building. Ben continued monitoring his communication systems. They weren't celebrating their victory or gloating over her situation. They were just returning to their normal lives, as if trapping an entire invasion fleet was a minor interruption to their day. This casual confidence disturbed her more than any threat could have. 20 minutes later, Vexera returned to face Jake. Her officers had been shocked by her proposal to surrender, but they had also understood the mathematics of their situation. 37 ships against 63 was bad enough. 37 ships against 63 ships that knew exactly where they were and what they could do was suicide. I accept your terms, she said. Jake nodded. Admiral Rodriguez, this is New Dakota Colony. Zephyrian Commander has agreed to peaceful withdrawal. Please escort their ships to the edge of human space. Copy that, New Dakota. Well done. One by one, human ships began to appear around the Zephyrian fleet. They had been so well hidden that even now, Vexera couldn't understand how she had missed them. The human vessels moved with precision and purpose, surrounding her ships without making any threatening moves. Admiral Rodriguez, came a new voice over the communicator. This is Commander Vexera of the Zephyrian Empire. I am ready to comply with your escort orders. Welcome, Commander. I'm glad we could resolve this without violence. Please follow. My lead will have you safely out of human space within 6 hours. As Vexera prepared to board her ship, she turned back to Jake one last time. What will you tell your superiors about today? He asked. She thought for a moment. I will tell them that we encountered a species unlike any other. I will tell them that humanity is not weak, not unprepared, and definitely not prey. Good. And I will tell them, she continued, that any commander who thinks they can conquer human space should think very carefully about whether they want to bet their entire fleet on that assumption. Jake smiled. That sounds like a very wise report, Commander. As the Zephyrian ships lifted off under human escort, the colonists of New Dakota watched them go. Soon, word would spread throughout the galaxy about what had happened here. Other aggressive species would hear the story and think twice before threatening human worlds. And in a small mining colony on the edge of space, the tired veterans would go back to their peaceful lives, secure in the knowledge that sometimes the best way to avoid a war is to show your enemies exactly why starting one would be their last mistake. The legend of humanity had just grown a little larger, and the galaxy had become a little safer for everyone who valued peace over conquest.